Here we go. We're ready for the professional educator. So as we have flexible learning environment, learning culture, intentional content, and professional educator. Let's be clear. We've talked a lot about shifting the focus from the teacher to the student. But now let's take a little time, because we can't effectively move the focus from the teacher to the student without having professional educators to do that. And that means that teaching in a flipped learning environment does not get easier. It just gets more interesting. Now, in a flipped classroom, here's what I hope I never ever see. Students go take video, they go home and they watch it. And then they come to class and sit while the teacher sits at their desk. That is not a flipped learning environment. Unfortunately, I have seen it. The teacher would send home the video, and the students would watch the video, which was A, too long, and B, very boring, and then they would only have the reward of coming to class and sitting and doing those same 30-some homework problems they would have used to have done. That would have been at least beneficial in the sense that the teacher was there to help if the teacher wasn't disengaged by sitting at her desk. So in this case, that is not good flip, and it does not reflect a good flexible learning environment. It definitely did not reflect a learning culture, and it certainly didn't reflect intentional content unless the intent was the teacher got to sit at their desk. And worst of all, it did not reflect a professional educator. So let's talk about how important a professional educator is to the flipped learning process. Well, first off, a good professional educator knows their classroom. They know their content. They have a wealth of knowledge or a wealth of experience or both that allows them to say this is worth and useful to move over here. This absolutely has to stay in the group environment. This is something students will struggle with, and I need to be present for this. Or this is something that is best worked on partially in a group space outside of class and partially in a group space inside of class. But it takes a professional educator to determine which piles all these pieces go in. And so, as a professional educator, you are the most important part of planning for your flipped classroom. While the students might be the focus of the learning, you as the educator need to be the focus of the planning. And so, what else needs to be happening as a professional educator? We've already talked a little bit about Bloom's taxonomy. At the top, you have synthesis, evaluation, creation. At the bottom, you have that vocabulary, that recall. Okay? Those are the items you know as a teacher can be moved elsewhere. These other items are items that either need to happen in the group space or, like creation, maybe part of them happen outside the group space, but then they're brought to the group space because no good creation is fulfilled until it has an audience. And so that's something that when we get to the top of Bloom's hierarchy, it requires maybe both the individual and the group space to fulfill its true purpose. And that's where a professional educator comes in. You also have to be engaged with the students. You have to know, what if these things that I thought could go home actually went home effectively or went to that individual space effectively? I also need resources to know what to do in this classroom. There are teachers doing some great things inside classrooms that we never had the opportunity to fit inside this overflowing bucket previously, that now that some of the things have moved over here can now fit inside. Things like mastery, things like creation, things like demonstration, things that change assessment. And assessment is one of the biggest areas that needs to be dealt with by a professional educator. Because as an educator, it's our job to determine whether formatively, meaning without penalty, meaning as a waypoint on the way to learning, that Formatively, this is where the student is, this is what the student needs, here's what inputs to put into the process to get the student where they need to go. Versus what's summative. The state requires this, college readiness requires this, the district goals are these, I have to have this so that the student, when they become independent, can demonstrate that learning and/or knowledge in other places and other venues, not just within the petri dish that is the classroom. So the professional educator is key to knowing how assessment needs to work within that classroom structure. Additionally, it also means having a learning community to support you. One of the things that the learning community provides is opportunities for sharing, opportunities for questions, and opportunities for ideas. Because most teachers have good ideas. All teachers have ideas. Some of them are good, some of them are less than effective. But when we share them, it's easy to sort out which ideas are good from which ideas are maybe not going to work in my situation, or which ideas may not work in my situation, but if I tweak them in this way, they will. And that's where organizations like the Illinois Flipped and Blended Learning Network come in. Organizations like the Flipped Learning Network come in. Organizations like the Flipped Learning Global Initiative come in. All of these types of ideas come together where people come together. And so when we come together as professional educators, it's amazing what we can accomplish. So get involved, get interacting, get communicating, and most importantly, use your knowledge, your skill, and your experience to be a professional educator for your students.